Okay, in this assignment, this is our final Political Science 205 assignment. I've decided to go with modules 2 and modules 4 to discuss a dictatorship, a democracy, and a constitutional crisis that is currently happening in specific countries. First, I decided to take a look at Module 2. Module 2 referred to dictatorships and democracies. It's important to differentiate between these two. A dictatorship is a scenario where one person or one group maintains most of the power and the people do not really have a say in what is going on. In a democracy, there's more order and more people have a say in policies and the government and what should and how everything should be dealt with within a society. A strong dictatorship we can look at in today's society as somewhere like North Korea. And a strong democracy that we can look at is somewhere like here in the United States. Now, in the video that we watched in class, we mainly discussed Venezuela. Venezuela has been shifting towards more of a dictatorship than a democracy as of late. We can see that through certain aspects that the country has been participating in. One example is voter fraud. When the leaders clearly manipulate elections and say that, oh, yeah, there were many people coming to the election and voting, when that is simply not true, that is one way to identify voter fraud. These people say that, oh, yes, we were elected in office, so we deserve to be there. But truly, they rigged the election and manipulated the people into thinking that they were elected just to stay in power. Or they persuaded people by telling them, if you don't vote for me, then, something's going to happen to you. So they voted for them. So, yes, maybe there was an election, but still, it's more of a dictatorship. Within Venezuela, this has caused many political injuries, deaths, social unrest, and it is very bad for the economy. Dictatorships have tended to not be good for the economy because it really only favors one group or one person, one power-hungry person. The country that I decided to look at regarding possibly shifting towards a dictatorship is Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, there have been very similar things as to Venezuela. Voter fraud, tampering with legal documents, and because of this, there's been one leader mainly calling all the shots and in charge of everything, and that has caused the economy to completely downfall, people to starve, hyperinflation, and violence and protests. It's important to understand that a dictatorship does not favor the popular. A dictatorship only favors those who are power hungry and the elites. A dictatorship is not good for the overall average Joe and economy, and it results in people protesting, people very angry, and people overall mad with the situation. Although it's tough because those civilians cannot do much when the government is fully in control and they do not let them in and let them run for office or anything like that. Now, time to shift over to Module 4. Module 4 was more about a constitutional crisis. Now, this can be similar to a democracy shifting towards a dictatorship. A constitutional crisis can be examples of countries disregarding their constitution and shifting towards a different type of thinking. Now, this is mainly common when one group of people like to take power and they disregard everyone else. I mean, pretty much like a dictatorship. It's tough because the average person just does not have a say, so they can't do much about it. Now, Poland has experienced this issue through marches and protests, and Poland has always been in the way during wars and during changes through World War One and Two, and they joined the European Union to preserve this order. Although, as of lately, the people in charge have wanted to shift away from the European Union. Now, this can look progressive, but also the European Union was set in place to preserve democracy. So now Poland's democracy is threatened by the European Union possibly, leaving Poland. The European Union is not happy about this, but they find themselves kind of in a crunch because legally they can't do anything about it. Now, this definitely poses as a constitutional crisis because the Poland people, most of them still want the European Union, but the people in charge and of power want to leave it and possibly move towards a more authoritarian style of government. Now, the country that I decided to relate this to was Brazil. Brazil is also shifting away from a democracy style of government through having a constitutional crisis. Now, typically in a democracy, you're going to have judges vote for stuff, and then that is just kind of what the law is, and that's how courts are seen. Although in Brazil, lately, judges have been seen to be swayed by one way or the other, which is definitely unconstitutional if you're having biased judges and biased law enforcement. And then there are also biased elections. And through all of this, there's social unrest, violence, and just an overall bad economy. The Brazil people have, this has mainly happened through, dividing the people and publishing fake news, propaganda, and that all causes violence. Now, ways that democracy is in threat and this constitutional crisis happens, which these two modules are very similar, Module 2 and Module 4, is definitely through the media. When everyone is divided and when one power-hungry group or person just wants what's best for them. It's very unfortunate that this happens in the world we live in today, but it definitely does. And hopefully that we can stay clear of that in the United States because, I like living, in the land of the free and the home of the brave. But these are the sources that were used throughout this presentation. And just a quick recap, this was mainly a video about democracies and dictatorships and also constitutional crises and how those can affect that. Poland, Brazil, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe are all affected by these areas of conflict by power-hungry leaders.